Another wonderful Rotary Thursday, and glad to have each of you here. I was wondering if it would be light attendance. I guess some folks decided to take a longer Memorial Day weekend and starting to enjoy the beach. And we have one with us that may have just come from the beach, but at least his apparel would kind of indicate that. But I don't think he's still getting the point or whatever. But anyway, I like the outfit personally. Anyway, thank y'all for being here. And Terry's going to open us up, give our invocation this morning. Yes.
Really short, sweet as well. Father, I want to thank you for Rotary Club brothers and sisters and looking out for their family and covering out the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Terry. Sergeant Arms, anything to report?
Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians and guests. I'd like to say welcome to Mark Mitford, who is joining us from our Sanford Rotary Club. So, welcome, Mark. Glad to have you.
Thank you. He said he's here as a spy.
Now, usually, Mark, when we have a guest from Sanford Rotary, since y'all sing, we usually ask you to just sing a solo. Is that something you're prepared to do?
I've been singing in my head. I am not prepared to do it. I'm not prepared to do it on Tuesdays either.
So, Mark is president-elect. Isn't that right, Mark?
I guess.
Yeah, president-elect. He's on track with me, so we'll be serving as
right.
president at the same time. So, congratulations on that, Mark.
Absolutely.
Any announcements today?
I got one.
Yeah, Larry.
Sad news. I just spoke to Al Rushatz today. I won't get into the details, but the situation for Linda is not good. And he's dealing with his share of medical issues too, because he called me back from Moore County Hospital, and he's got some heart problems, valve problems that they're looking at, and he may or may not be able to get that surgery. It all depends on tests that they run in the next couple of weeks. But we all need to pray for Linda and for the whole family. We won't see Al for a while, I'm sure. But it's they just got some really terrible news yesterday. So everyone, think about him and pray about him. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you for sharing that. Any other announcements? How about brags? Anybody have any brags today? Terry?
Yep, sir. I went out this morning and videoed a sorority that came out of Raleigh and donated. They donated $500 to BT Bullet kindergarten kids. So I thought it was kind of nice. I got a chance to video the kindergarten kids, and they actually sat there and listened to somebody read. There was all over the place. So it's just a little fun video this morning.
Good. Thank you, Terry. Any others?
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll turn it back over to you.
Quiet group today. No announcement. Can't coax anyone to saying anything. Okay. At that, then, well, let's just go ahead and get in our program. It's very special on the follow-up of our Memorial Day weekend, where we think back to those that have sacrificed lives and for our country. How many veterans do we have here in the building? Great. Thank y'all so much for your service. But I asked a couple of weeks ago. Somebody had given me a hint that Neil had a lot that he could tell us about the Army and West Point and a thing or two like that. So I talked with him, and he said he would love to share that. So at this time, I just remember when I was in high school, that was an especially significant thing if anyone in your class got an appointment to any of the military academies. And so we have one of our very own here that did that. And this time I'm going to ask Neil if he'll come forward and just share some recollections. And he has promised to model this uniform. He said it still fits him perfectly. And all the buttons button and all of that stuff. So
Well, they don't all button, but I will, I guess
Turn them back on so we can see.
I can put it on, but as you can see,
Wow, not bad.
the sands of time, either it's my weightlifting or
That's woven, probably shrunk up.
or my one-arm curls, I don't know, whatever, so. But this is.
The hat still fits, right?
This is, the hat still fits, yeah. This is a full dress uniform for all West Point cadets. And I may have time to give a little bit of his bio towards the end of this. So anyway, how about that? Okay, this is Sylvanus Thayer. Colonel Sylvanus Thayer. He's considered the father of the modern academy at West Point. After the Revolutionary War in 1784, Congress passed a law that reduced the Army to 25 privates to guard stores at Fort Pitt and 55 privates to guard stores at West Point. These were all basically captured British arms that needed to be guarded. There were very few officers still remaining on active duty at that time. George Washington and Alexander Hamilton both lobbied extensively for some sort of a school to produce Army officers for the Army. But that didn't happen until 1802, and finally Thomas Jefferson got to Congress and got them to agree to establish an academy, it was called at the time, and which didn't necessarily at that time mean a college or a university. The Corps of Cadets were made up of probably 20 to 30 individuals that ran from like age of 12, 14, up to about 24. And it was very unstructured at the time. Basically, they were trying to teach these people how to be artillerists, the technical aspects of firing cannons and so forth, with a little bit of engineering thrown in at the same time. Well, after Sylvanus Thayer actually went to Dartmouth, had a degree from Dartmouth, and then went to West Point and graduated in 1808. He served in the War of 1812 with distinction, and after that war, the Department of the Army decided that he was smart enough to, and they sent him to France to go to study at the École Polytechnique de Guerre, the French military academy, where he was for about a year. He brought back hundreds and hundreds of books and ideas of how to actually put some structure into the academy. So when he came back, he was named superintendent of West Point. He put some structure into the academy. They call it the Thayer system, and it's still used today to a certain extent, whereas cadets are basically graded almost every day in every subject. And he established this rigor and a little bit of adherence to regulations that wasn't being done earlier by these cadets. This is a picture of the academy. Basically, what you see over here, these were basically the academic buildings, the barracks up here, cadet chapel up here, and these were some officers' housing along the road. And of course, it's right at the bend in the Hudson River where the great chain was stretched during the Revolutionary War to keep the British from going upriver to Albany. And just from a different angle, this is the plain. Washington Hall, which was built, it was being built when I arrived in 1967. And we moved into that barracks my yearling year. This is the parade ground where all the parades were held. Trophy point down here where the big various trophies were. Back in the 1800s, this is what the uniforms looked like. You can tell on the full dress uniform, hasn't changed very much. And that was no, that's not the typical cadet. Here's a typical cadet room in the 1800s. Our rooms were a little more modern. But we were either 2 or 3 cadets to a room. There was a sink in all of the rooms, so you could actually shave in the morning. We had reveille breakfast formation at 6 a.m. every morning, except Sunday. You were expected to be in formation at 6 a.m., shaved and in uniform. During the Civil War, West Point in the Civil War, okay? There were an awful lot of West Pointers who participated in the Civil War. Of course, this is Robert E. Lee. Jefferson Davis was a member of the class of 1828, and he served in the Army, the U.S. Army, for a while. And then he was a member of the House of Representatives from Mississippi. Of course, later on, he was Secretary of War before the Civil War started, and then President of the Confederate States of America. And just in deference to the Southerners who still are talking about the War of Northern Aggression, I'm only going to mention some of the Confederate generals here. These were all generals in the Confederate Army who graduated from West Point. There were actually 306 West Point graduates who were the leaders of the Confederate military, and as many or more in the Union Army. And this is a parade in front of Washington Hall. The barracks were on the sides. This is the main door to the mess hall. And this is a more modern parade, probably back in the 70s or 80s.
How often did y'all do formations like this?
Okay, good question. Yeah. Basically, we paraded every Saturday, except some Saturdays during the winter. We did not have major parades, but in the spring and fall, especially during football season, there was a parade every Saturday, unless it rained so hard. But there were many times that we were out there when it did start to rain, and of course these old wool uniforms got heavy and smelly by the time we got back. And sometimes, in the heat of late May and early June, when we were parading, we would sweat in them also, and they got a little smelly. But we did have laundry service, so we could send them up to the laundry. The band is kind of a tradition at West Point. It's one of the top military bands in the world. Very select individuals who are selected to be in that band. Basically, once they get in, they probably spend almost their entire career there as a band member. They've put out several records that can be bought. They also not only have the marching band, but they have other smaller groups, quartets and some.
They're not cadets?
These are not cadets, no.
Oh, okay.
These are all enlisted except for the band director, who is normally a major or lieutenant colonel. But these are all enlisted. A lot of, you see a lot of very high ranking. Some of these you can see here, staff sergeant, there's a sergeant first class. Very, you know, once they get into that assignment, they can basically stay until they have 30 years in.
Yeah, they're pros.
And they're pros, yeah, they are. They're musicians.
Now, are these for the public and parents, or is this just something that's kind of like military duty?
Well, until 9/11, obviously the post was basically open to, you know, to anybody. Now it's a little more restrictive. I mean, you have to go through security in order to get on. But parades at that time were when I was there at least, they were very well attended. There would be a set of bleachers all around the edge of the parade ground, and especially on football days, you know, a lot of people would come up and to tailgate before the football game, and they'd come to the parade. The parade was always in the morning. After our classes that we took, when I was there, we attended class 6 days a week. Saturday just in the morning. Usually class on Saturday went to about 10. The parade usually started about 11. And just another picture of the color guard with the cadet chapel in the background. This is an interesting one. This is our day, reception day. These are the new cadets who just arrived that day. They get assigned to a company and assigned to a squad leader. And in one day, they arrive. They get obviously shoes, socks, shorts, and a t-shirt, haircuts, and then they go around and pick up the rest of their uniforms, everything they need for that day. They learn how to salute and how to march. At the end of that day, they all march out to Trophy Point and are sworn into the Army. Very, very interesting. Usually the parents bring their kids in. They go up to the stadium and get briefed by the superintendent and some of the other people, while the young men and women are learning how to at least stand and march, and then they all go down in the afternoon for the parade out to Trophy Point.
What year did y'all become co-ed? I see a lady in there.
1980. 80 it was. 1980.
How come nobody's smiling?
How come nobody's smiling? No. Wipe that smile off your face, mister. Nobody is smiling. One of the things that you get on this first day is this little black book. It's called Bugle Notes. This is my Bugle Notes from 1967. And basically, you need to learn everything that's in this book. And it goes from the history of the Army, history of the military academy, the songs that are sung, or the cheers that are given at football games or basketball games, whatever. And you can be tested on all of these things by the upperclassmen.
What's the name of that book again, please?
Bugle Notes. Bugle Notes.
Hey, Beanhead, what about the cow?
So Ed asked me, Beanhead, which means plebe or fourth classman, how's the cow? Sir, she walks, she talks, she's full of chalk. The lacteal fluid of the female of the bovine species is highly prolific to the nth degree. That's in this book.
And etched in your mind, isn't it?
And etched in my mind, I have not forgotten it. And what that is when you're sitting at the dining room table, the mess hall will seat about 4,400 people at tables of 10. During Beast Barracks, which is the first summer that the cadets are there. There's usually 7 plebes at a table and 3 upperclassmen. That question, how's the cow, is asked of the beverage corporal who sits at the foot of the table. And it's an answer, a reply to how many cartons of milk are left on the table. So how's the cow? It's highly prolific to the nth degree. If there are 5 cartons of milk, highly prolific to the 5th degree. That tells the upperclassmen how many, and so that's just one of the things that you have to learn. Also, the plebes have to learn the days, and the days basically are, there are so many days till graduation, there are so many days till 100th night for the upper class, so many days till Christmas leave, so many days till the Army-Navy game, and of course that changes every day, so you have to relearn it every day. That's part of what's called plebe poop.
What are the consequences for being bad?
Oh, well, when I was there, they don't do it anymore, but they used to make us brace, which was stand against the wall with your neck back until you started sweating nickels to the wall. That was one of the, in olden times there was a lot worse hazing. They used to have one, I never had it, I mean it was done away with at the time, but when MacArthur was there, they had one that was called sitting on infinity, where you kind of bent down like you were sitting on a bayonet, something like this, for how many hours the upperclassmen wanted you to do that. At one point, when we were having inspection, they would have us hold our rifle out, our M14 out like this, and when that got too heavy, then they'd give us a broomstick, and when that got too heavy, they'd give us a matchstick, and then they would berate us for how weak we were. This is a swearing-in ceremony on the first day. First day you're sworn into the United States Army, and from that point on, cadets receive pay. You get paid to go there. It's normally, I think it's still the same, it was half of the second lieutenant's pay. Out of that, we paid for our uniforms, we paid for our books. We never had cash. We could get so much cash a month to go to the little 5 and dime boodlers, they called it, for candy, although we couldn't do that during beast barracks.
You never had to brace, did you?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Good question.
I've always had a question on the selection process.
Oh, okay.
I was from northern Minnesota. We never heard about West Point or any of the academies.
Right.
And I've heard that it's really a process of going through the local senator, have to get an applicant, or have to get
There are several ways. The biggest way is to either go through your local representative or your local senators. And they've gotten a lot better at going out and actually sending liaison. Michael Esquadro, who used to live out at Trace, was the academy liaison for his congressman, where he would go to high schools and talk to kids. And so a lot of that is done now. But the House of Representatives, each member of the House of Representatives can have 5 cadets at each academy at any one time. So mostly it's 1 a year, but sometimes he may be able to get 2 in, or if someone quits, obviously, then maybe he could get 3 in. The senators, the same way. Sons of Medal of Honor winners are automatically can get if they want to go, can go. No questions asked. The president has a certain number of appointees, the vice president has a certain number of appointees, and the athletic department has quite a few people that they can actually recruit and get in to play football, basketball, whatever. So, but yeah, I only did it because my dad had been in the Army Several of his friends were in the Army in World War II in Korea. I got interested in that, and I did all the research. I never had anybody come and talk to me about West Point, but I got interested in it. The thing to do if you have a son, a grandson, a nephew, or a neighbor who might be interested, the first thing to do is to write a letter to the admissions department and get a file made. And then they start sending you some information. So if you know of anybody who might be interested, that's one way to get started on it.
Tell everybody your process.
Oh, my process. Okay. Well, I was a first alternate for my congressman, and I didn't get in right out of high school. So I went to the University of Minnesota for a year, and I decided that I would reapply. And so I rewrote to my congressman, and I wrote to both of my senators, and I was taking a physics final, and on a Friday afternoon, I got back to my dorm room, and someone said, "There's a phone call for you." And I walked down, and it was one of the managers from Senator McCarthy's office, one of the most liberal Democrats in Minnesota history, which has a lot of liberal. And it just so happened that my folks were both Republicans, and I was fairly conservative even at that time. But I was nominated. I got into the academy. I was an alternate for him, but I was qualified alternate, and I got into the academy that way. So several people tried more than 1 year.
And what's the student enrollment?
Generally, there's about 1,400. I was going to get into that. That come in each summer. New cadets that come in. There's usually somewhere between around 975 and maybe 1,025 that actually graduate. So there is an attrition process. The other thing that I forgot to mention was that there are appointments given to soldiers who are enlisted that display some leadership skills, and qualities. And West Point also has a prep school where most of these soldiers go for the year prior to coming into West Point to get back, because maybe their academics were a year old or 2 years old. The prep school gets them going pretty strong in math and English. My first two roommates in Beast Barracks were both prep schoolers, had been in the Army, and they taught me how to shine a belt buckle and how to spit polish my shoes, which I would have had a very tough time without that assistance. Neither of them graduated. They both, once their service obligation was up, they decided that the Army wasn't for them. I think they came there probably at the time was to stay out of Vietnam. This is Trophy Point, dedicated to the men who died in World War I, and that's where the swearing-in ceremony takes place. The clock tower. This is a very famous clock tower. This is one of the barracks buildings. And the reason that clock tower is famous, it goes to General MacArthur when he was a cadet. When he was a first classman, a senior, firstie, somehow he and some of his roommates or company mates got the morning reveille gun from Trophy Point and got it up to the top of that clock tower.
And when you're saying gun, you're like talking like a cannon, right?
Yes, a cannon.
Something big.
A reveille cannon. It took engineers a week to get it down. Nobody really knew. I guess maybe if I read one of MacArthur's first books or something, I could find out what. But nobody nobody could understand how they could get it up there in the first place. But it took a week to get it back down. One of the amusing anecdotes. Okay. This is a statue of George Patton. I got some statues here now to show you. And his statue was placed right here opposite the library because it was said that when he was a cadet, he could never find the library. He did not graduate very high in his class. But he certainly was a good warrior.
Hey Neil, when you take military history at West Point, I mean, are they critical of famous generals like MacArthur and Patton for the things they did not do well or bad decisions?
Oh, yeah, both. One of the courses that you take as a cow, as a second classman or junior, it's called History of the Military Art. We call it art. It's a 2-semester course. It starts back with the Greek phalanxes and goes all the way up. At least in my time, it went up through the Second World War. Most of the time was spent on the Napoleon Wars and the Civil War. And I didn't bring those books in, but I've got the West Point atlases of the American Wars and of the Napoleon Wars. I should have brought those in too. But yes, these are military historians who teach the course, and you go over the right and the wrong things. So there is some things that were very critical, and I'm sure now that a lot more is being done. We did not do much on Vietnam at all at that point because we were still right in the middle of it. But I'm sure that right now, especially in the world of today, with the kind of problems that we're having, they do more on Vietnam and then the war against terrorism, global terrorism. The other thing that I've heard is that they've gone away from a lot of the stuff that we had to learn here, and the plebes now learn more about what's really going on in the real Army today, doing more, finding out more about the munitions and the armament that is in the real Army. Speaking of that, like I said, the first summer that you're there as Beast Barracks is learning to march, conditioning, physical education, very basic stuff until academics start. Your second summer there, you have a month leave, and then for 2 months you go out to Lake Popolopan and camp there, and there's where you receive your first introduction into military things. You get to go out and be a forward observer when they fire some artillery, learn a little bit about signal corps things, like how to do a Western Union splice on wire, infantry stuff.
At what point in your first year did you wind up in the hospital?
Good point. I forgot to mention that. I arrived at West Point at 165 pounds, the same height I am now. I had been 165 pounds all through high school playing football. I was a guard on our football team, and 165 pounds at the University of Minnesota. 3 weeks after I arrived, I was 140 pounds and in the hospital. At that time, the upperclassmen, when you were at a meal, could sit you up. Mr. Jensen, 1 Cheerio. Yes, sir. Take 1 Cheerio, sit up. Don't eat anymore. They thought I was a little overweight, which I probably was at the time.
Worked good on the football field, though, didn't it? Worked good on the football field, didn't it?
Yeah,
there you go.
But that changed in 1972 when a congressman's son was a plebe and wrote to his dad that they don't let us eat a meal down here. And they sent some investigators, and during these barracks, some cadets were not allowed to eat or eat much. And at that point then, from that point forward, they're all allowed to eat a full and sufficient meal. Now, define full and sufficient, that's up to the upperclassmen that were sitting on your table. But yeah, it was one of the harassing things that they did. One of the things that they did to try to instill discipline, if you will. And the way I looked at it, it was a lot like Ranger School. They try to teach you how far they can push you and what you can handle. Can you handle the stress? Okay, let me go through a couple more of these. This is the newest statue. I got this picture off of an email that I received about 3 weeks ago. This statue of Ulysses S. Grant was just dedicated 4 weeks ago at West Point. And I'm not even sure where they put it. It looks like it's probably down by Trophy Point somewhere. This is the old cadet chapel, and the interesting thing about the old cadet chapel is along the walls are these plaques that were designated for the generals who fought in the Revolutionary War. There is one plaque that is still on the wall, but it's blank, and that was General Benedict Arnold's plaque. He was a hero in Quebec and at Saratoga, but after he sold the plans for West Point, they changed his plaque. Here are just some of the accomplishments from some of the graduates. Pershing, MacArthur, Hap Arnold, Ike Eisenhower, and Omar Bradley were all became generals of the Army. There's only one other general of the Army that was not a West Point graduate. No, not Washington. My mind just went blank. He was the He was the Secretary of Defense during World War II, and what was the plan? And became Secretary of State.
Not Rumsfeld, was it?
No. During World War II. The plan. Marshall Plan. Marshall graduated, I think, from the Citadel, or maybe from VMI. I'm not sure. Okay, we've had 2 presidents from West Point, Grant and Eisenhower, 3 Heisman Trophy winners. These were the first astronauts. There have been several more astronauts since then, not when the space station came in, younger kids now. George Gethels was a class of 1880, and he built the Panama Canal. Abner Doubleday, class of 1842, father of baseball. How many have zip-lined in their life? Okay. Well, this was the father of zip-lining. You'll notice that there's no safety. This is what happened during your second summer at West Point out at Lake Popolopan. On one side of the lake was a 50-foot tower. This line was anchored to a tree on the other side of the lake. And there would be a sergeant over there, and you would come down the zip line, and he would raise a flag. When the flag went up, you were supposed to bring your legs up. And when the flag came down, you were supposed to let go and drop into the water. One person that I know of actually rode it into the tree.
Was it a pretty good angle?
Well, yeah, 50 feet down to like.
Did you get the person's story?
0.
Getting going pretty good, huh?
Oh yeah. It was a lot of fun.
So
Okay, that's it.
Could you tell about Al?
Oh, yeah. You guys wanted to know a little bit of, just a couple things. Of course, you all know that Mike Krzyzewski was a graduate. And, of course, now he's a Duke coach. There were 83 Medal of Honor winners who were West Point graduates, 90 Rhodes Scholars, and 29 Rotary Ambassador Scholars. And this is the Association of Graduates register. Every 10 years they put out a hardcover book like this that has a biography of everybody who's graduated. In the off years, between 10 years, they usually just go back like 50 or 60 years, the latest ones. And I just wanted to read this little bit. Here is Al Stephen Rushat's class of 1962. His column number was 24191. That means he was the 24,191st graduate of West Point. He was born in Pennsylvania. He was an alternate. He went infantry, went to the aviation school in 1965 and 68. He was with the aviation battalion in Vietnam, 65, 66. Bronze Star Medal, 8 Air Medals. He was the defense rep of India in 68 and 69. Joint Service Commendation Medal. Went to the infantry school for his advanced course. Went to the 8th Cav in Vietnam in 70-71, where he received the Distinguished Flying Cross, Bronze Star Medal, and 17 Air Medals. Went to the Armed Forces Staff College in 72. Got a master's in physical education from Penn State University in 74. His PhD in 84. He was with the Office of Physical Education at West Point in 74 to 78. He was a commanding officer of the 269th Aviation Battalion, 78 to 80. G3 of the 18th Airborne Corps, 80-81. Then he went to the Army War College in 82. Went back to West Point in the Directorate of Physical Education from 84 to 90, where he retired in 90. He now lives at Carolina Trace in Sanford. So people update their biographies, and
he was named to the Hall of Fame.
And he was, that's not, well, it might be in the new one.
Yeah.
I'll just go through one other short one, okay? This is a non-graduate, class of 1834. Edgar Allan Poe, born in Massachusetts. He was an alternate from Virginia and spent 1 year in the Army, and then he got out. Distinguished American poet.
Nevermore.
The quick story about Edgar Allan Poe was one day during beach barracks, he was told to report under arms to his squad leader. And he arrived with his cross belts on, the belt, and his rifle, and naked. I think that's what probably got it out of the military.
How about a big hand for Neil? We're very proud as a Rotary Club to have both you and Al West Point graduates and your service to our country. Very proud. And thank you for that informative presentation on West Point. I knew none of that stuff, so it was meaningful to me. At this time, we're going to draw.
Today we raised $70 for the Polio Plus campaign, $35 to the winner, $35 to the campaign, and I'm not going to have Neil pick because he always wins, and I'm figuring since he gave the program, I'm going to have President Morris pick. He's a winner, big winner too.
080, 3080, 3080. That's the one before me.
Hey, you can't say that I rigged it. People are like, what kind of deal you and Neil got going?
He got paid for lunch.
Hey, he deserves it, doesn't he? Good program. Let's give him a
How many more of these do we have before the big draw?
We have 4 more weeks, including the final.
Okay.
So we have 4 weeks in June. This is week number 22. You know, Van, I'm getting real tired of it.
Hopefully it's got my name on it.
No, but it is another ticket you sold.
Okay.
Who is it?
Thank you.
Scott Harris.
Oh, yeah, Harris Ability. Oh, yeah. Him and his old man, $200 each, $500 for
Okay,
every
since
year.
Bill was our winner, he gets to lead us in the 4-way test and the pledge of allegiance.
4-way test of the things we think, say, or do. First,
Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
I
I
pledge
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Short meeting.
Oh, no. Hey,